That's my baby. I'm dying.
That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
Left.
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the fuck are you talking about?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly roundup, whatever the heck we want to call it. It's whatever me and Daniel decide on a weekly basis, pretty much at this point. And after last week, I know I didn't realize until I went back and watched the video there was some connection issues. So let's hope there's not that on this end again tonight. But new phone, new connection should be much better. And speaking of new connections, the Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown connection worked really well in week one, Daniel, but boy, did that defense look a little shaky, especially late in the game, as they tried to hold a big lead. And it got way closer than it should have. And there was a lot of struggles in a lot of areas and a lot of things you would take away from it from a player perspective, from a coaching perspective, and you're not happy with a lot of it. But your thoughts as somebody who watched the game.
Of course, the poll question is the Eagles' defense will struggle versus the Vikings. I'm going to get to that in a second. I just felt like just the ins and outs of the defense, they gave up too much on the running game. Of course, we're going to talk about Jordan Davis, how when he was on the field, they only gave up 2.9 yards a carry. When he was off the field, it was over 10 yards a carry. And he only saw 20 snaps, which was the fewest of the defensive tackles on the field. So that's a cause for concern. We don't know why they did it. Maybe they're just working the rookies into it game by game, and they're going to wind up pushing it up a little bit, and they don't want to overload them early. But when you have a stat like that just stands out, you got to play that guy. If he's that dominant, I don't care if there's injury issues or issues with his stamina. He gets tired too much.
Yeah, we thought that. He's 350 pounds. Whatever. The Kobe Dean didn't play a lot, right? Just seemed like a lot of questionable scheme things from a scheming perspective, especially late in the game. But yes, Big Phil's win tonight, John. Absolutely. Well, we can get into the offense in a minute, but. But the defense, with all those things you talk about, Jordan Davis not seeing, the field as much as he should. Do you feel like this defense will struggle again? Not the team, but the defense in particular will struggle again against the Vikings.
I think they will. Like, I'm gonna go with agree to the poll. I do feel like they're gonna struggle again because I feel like they're not gonna change up the lines. They're not going to change up the snap count right away. I feel like it's going to be a thing where we got to wait to like week 6 and week 7 until Gannon decides to play these guys more snaps, which I think is the wrong choice. You want to first and third round pick. You want to get them on the field as much as possible. But that's just how he does it. Like I saw it last year, how he did it. Like he slowly got the defense involved a little bit as the season went on, and he was kind of stubborn to the point where you want to get the right guys on the field at the right times. And Davis not being on the field as much, especially against a team like the Lions who have DeAndre Swift, who's a really good runner, I feel like he's going to be a right outside the top 5 and top 5 backs this year. You got to get him up there. And I feel like as the season goes, they're going to incorporate them more and they won't struggle as much. But you're playing the Vikings. You got Jefferson on that team. You got Dalvin Cook. Mathiason's good. You got a healthy Adam Thielen on the other side. You got to get every stud player on the field no matter what. And you can't just hold them back because you want to incorporate them slowly into the offense. So I feel like they're going to struggle. I feel like the offense is going to play great. I think watching that game against Green Bay, they just took advantage of that bad offensive line that Green Bay had, and they just got to Aaron Rodgers, and he has nobody to throw to. We got in my opinion, two stud receivers we didn't even have to use Devontae Smith last week. And I would give the Lions credit because their secondary is good. It's very underrated. But A.J. Brown had a field day against that secondary, and Devontae Smith kind of just made it so that he wasn't getting triple coverage because he had to worry about Smith. And it allowed kind of like Goddard to go underneath and allowed Gainwell to catch a few passes. But A.J. Brown just had his way. And I feel like it's going to be even better against the Vikings because I feel like the Lions have a better secondary than the Vikings.
Vikings, yeah. I mean, the Vikings, their strength actually was they had a solid run defense last year, and it looks like from everything you looked at the moves they made and what you were supposed to be, reading what's on paper, they got a lot better in that area. I've read some things that have said that's the best defense they've had since they went to the NFC title game against us. That's kind of what they've been missing. You've talked about how good Kirk Cousins has been. You're a bigger Kirk Cousins guy than I am. But I'll even admit, if you give Kirk Cousins a top 10 defense or, a really, really good defense, all of a sudden, he becomes a guy that your chances of winning big games become much, much better because it's not all on his shoulders. So
it makes an average quarterback look above average because he doesn't have the pressure, like you said. He can take his time and make his reads.
And the Packers, they've got a lot of moving pieces right now. As far as all the different things that they're going through offensively to try to adjust to losing Devontae Adams and things like that. And you saw that, the guy that dropped the wide open touchdown, the second round pick from North Dakota State. Good Lord. That Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you heard him in the post-game interview. It was funny when they were asking about it. And, these young guys. He's like, well, they're NFL players, right? They need to be able to make those plays. These guys are NFL players. They're on an NFL roster, and you got expectations, that you got to live up to. And he's like, that's myself included. But you heard him it seemed like he kind of put that in at the end to try to seem like a good teammate and a good leader. But we all knew what he was saying. You're wide open. You're going to walk into the end zone with an easy touchdown and you drop a ball that's perfectly placed in your hands. That's not going to win you games. And the Packers will figure things out because they're the Packers and they've got Rodgers and they're well coached, but it's going to take them a little bit. The Vikings, they made the move this offseason. They went with O'Connell to be the head coach and all these things because
a past quarterback who used to be under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
And they want to try to maximize everything that they have with that offense right now. And the defense is supposed to be better than it's been in the past 3-4 years. And that was supposed to be Mike Zimmer's forte. And he was kind of, disappointing in that area. So, right now in the NFC North, they're probably the favorite, right? The Lions might be better, but they're not good enough to do anything.
No. And the Bears got to win against the Niners, but it was monsoon conditions, so I don't take
the Bears might win 7 or 8 games and be like, oh, wow, look how much better the Bears look this year. But still, they're not good enough to go do anything, right? So you're like, it's that's the Vikings division to take this year. And they, they have a team where if you look at it top to bottom, you're looking at them and say, that's probably one of the top contenders in the NFC. So this is a good eye test game. Early in the year, I love a good eye test game, right? We're supposed to be a good team. We're supposed to be an NFC contender. The Vikings are supposed to be an NFC contender. It's a good eye test game. And, will our defense struggle? I mean, it's hard for me to disagree with the poll and say that they, they're going to figure things out. And based off what I saw in the Lions game, I don't know if they will, There's going to be a lot there. It's hard to cover Justin Jefferson no matter what type of defensive scheme you're running. And, it's going to be even harder if the guys that you brought in that you're supposed to be getting after the quarterback. And Kirk Cousins is a guy that he's eaten us up in the past. But, if I want to beat him, I think the way I want to beat him is I've got pressure in his face all day. You know what I mean? If I give him time in the pocket, he's just going to destroy me anyway. So at least let me try to get pressure in his face and see what happens. Now, great quarterbacks beat the blitz. And we'll get into that in a minute when we talk about the offense because Jalen Hurts was blitzed a ton this week. And I've heard a lot of people use it as an excuse why he looked average to above average at best again. And great quarterbacks find a way to beat the blitz because, they see it at the line of scrimmage. They understand how much time they have to get the ball out and they get it out to where it needs to be at to make sure the blitz doesn't get to them. But at least if I've got guys like Reddick and these guys that I brought into my team and I brought into my roster to do something that like, what is their best strength? You get after the quarterback. I want you to try to get after the quarterback. And there wasn't really enough of that with the Lions game, which is weird. I mean, I know, you've got guys that are edge rushers like that drop back in coverage. That's fine. But if, this team, this defense in particular is very well built, top to bottom. It's very solid in all areas. And if I've got a guy like Reddick who his best strength is to get after the quarterback, I need him getting after the quarterback. That's just kind of why he was brought here. That was the whole point of him being brought here. I understand he can play in coverage. I understand it doesn't necessarily mean that he's bad in coverage. Oh, well, he can do that. And other guys, edge rushers, do that too. Well, I get that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing that he can do it. But, we brought him in here to get after the quarterback. We want him, he's hungry. We want him to eat, right? We want him to, hey, you're second in the NFL in sacks over the past few years or whatever it is, top 5, whatever it is. He's right there with the top, sack getters in the league over the past few years. And, you look at it and go, that's why you're supposed to be here. So go make that happen. And it's one game, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, before we go further into the Lions and Vikings, of course, we got a guy that is a Vikings fan in Alan Foy. Why don't you tell everybody about Alan Foy?
Yeah, well, Alan doing big things with eXp Realty down in Delaware now, but he's got his license in Jersey, Delaware, knows people in the Pennsylvania area, all these different areas that we have ATD followers. You make sure you hit up Alan Foy if you're looking to buy or sell a home, or if you're looking for a change of career or brokerage, you contact Alan Foy of eXp Realty LLC at 302-682-8820. Visit him at alan.foy@exprealty.com. But he's the man to talk to. And even down here in Florida where I'm at, it's amazing. They've got eXp Realty agents. So it doesn't matter where you're at. There's agents and there's people that you can talk to. Alan can lead you in the right direction. So make sure you hit him up.
Yeah, no, definitely so. But I disagree with this comment. It's a Minnesota defense completely shut down Rodgers. Can you imagine what he'll do against a below average quarterback like Hurts? It's like I said before, you got to take into account that Rodgers was without both of his tackles. That offensive line played shit against the Vikings. They just weren't 100%. They're not up to the capability of the offensive lines that the Packers usually have. On top of that, they were without Alan Lazard. They had Tanyan, who only played half the snaps because he's coming back from a major injury. It was just one of those games where the Packers just fell flat on their ass. I don't expect the Minnesota front to get the pressure like they did against Green Bay, because we do have a great offensive line that's going to give Hurts time to throw. And I do think he's going to find guys like A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert to throw to, and hopefully get Devontae Smith involved. I like the weapons that we have, and I could see a situation where both defenses struggle, and it's a high-scoring game, because if Gannon doesn't make the right corrections, we're going to give up yards and points. And then I feel like Minnesota is going to be in the same boat, because I don't feel like they're not going to be able to stop us. I felt like the Lions almost have a better defense than the Vikings are on par, and they gave up over 220 yards rushing against us. And what makes you think the Vikings are going to do a lot better than that?
Well, the Vikings, one of their strengths is actually their run defense. That's actually where they, if you look at their defense, that's where their strength has been. But I mean, that's the elephant in the room. Our elephant in the room has been our quarterback, and the elephant in the room for them is their defense. Yeah,
the secondary, which is the big gap for them. They got Peterson, so he'll likely be on A.J. Brown, but who are you going to cover Devontae Smith on the opposite side? Who are you going to have safety-wise? I feel like
I disagree with the comment of them shutting down Rodgers, too. That was more a combination of Green Bay just kind of being a mess offensively, trying to figure out everything they're doing. But Green Bay is very good defensively, and, Minnesota still did what they wanted to do offensively pretty comfortably, I think, in that game. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if this will be a slugfest, but I could see it going in that direction. I mean, I don't know if we necessarily thought Detroit would be a slugfest. It turned out to be one. I could see it being a similar type of game. What's funny is, we have the pick six, right? So we won 38-35, but when you look at it, it's like the offense put up 31 points, right? So that game's tied 31-31
Yeah.
offensively. You got your one touchdown defensively, actually. It's
Yeah.
like when you look at it, you're like, okay, that always helps when you get the defensive touchdown. But I mean, the offense, we ran the ball well, which is nice. You always loved running the ball, as well as we did in the game. But the one thing that concerns me with that, and we wanted to talk about the elephant in the room. We've been talking about it all off season with Jalen, and depending on who you listen to, you talk to certain people about, oh, you see how well Jalen played. I mean, did he? I mean, he ran the ball well again. His legs were a difference maker, but you don't want your quarterback running the ball 17 times. That's never good. And, passing the ball, he was very meh, Look, had some good, had some bad, but in general, very inconsistent, just like we saw all of last year. And there was times it felt like he was looking for A.J. Brown. And did I talk about this last week where we said what unit would be better? And I said I don't want to see him just trying to force the ball to A.J. Brown just because. Now, A.J. Brown had a phenomenal game, but it seemed like there was times where he'd look at A.J. Brown, and if A.J. Brown's not there, that's his first read. Okay, well, he's not there. Boop, let me figure out something else to do here. And he runs out the pocket, goes and scrambles, makes something with his legs. It's a positive play, whatever. But this is the very same thing we talked about him doing last year. Why can't you sit back there and go from A to B to C, especially when A, B, and C are all very, very good options? It's not like you're dealing with lesser. I know that last year Devontae Smith was my A option, and he's better than what B and C are. This year you've got three very, very solid options from A, B to C, right? You're going to have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert as your three primary receivers on the majority of your offensive plays. The majority.
I will say he did it, but he didn't do it as much as he would have.
It was inconsistent, right? It was inconsistent.
But there was a lot of times where no one could get open because, like I said, the Lions' secondary is very underrated, and they had coverage on. And
but guys aren't going to get open in this league, Daniel. And me and you both know that. And great receivers find ways to complete passes to guys that aren't necessarily considered open, because that's the way the NFL works, right? Like, you're going to have great coverage, and you got to find ways to make those throws in the tight coverage sometimes.
Yeah, well, yes and no, because I don't want him to force things and then cause a turnover because he's trying to force something when he can use his legs. If he looks on 2-3 different options and then decides to run, which he did on a couple of occasions. Even the commentator said they're like he would look. There was no one open on 2 or 3 reads, and then he'd run half the time. The other half of the time, he didn't make the same old one read to Brown, and then he would run. But I feel like he is getting a little bit better where he's not doing it as much, and I feel like it's a progression. I didn't expect him to be a complete 360 or 180 where he made the correction and he doesn't do it anymore. I expect him to do it every now and then, but as long as he shows some sort of improvement where he's shown, okay, at least he's trying to make the reads now, I'll be happy in the short term. I want to see him improve, gain the game, and I feel like he's going to do that. I saw him make the good reads to A.J. Brown. Those times when he could have ran and he didn't, and then he threw the ball and he found the open receiver. It's just you got to get it to them and make the smart read, and he started to do that a little bit. But I love the fact that our run game was very effective. Like I said, over 220 yards.
Which we thought was going to be the backbone of this offense. They were going to be a run-based offense.
Every running back had a touchdown in the game. I felt Gainwell was used in both the pass game a little bit. I want to see him a little bit more involved in that. But then in the running game, I was happy with Miles Sanders. He almost got to 100 yards on, I believe, 13 carries, which is very efficient for me, knowing that we kind of like divvied it up between Hurts, him, Gainwell, and then they even gave Boston Scott like 4 carries for like 10 yards. And that's just like you said, it's going to be the backbone of the team. And the fact that we have the wide receivers like that, the running game's going to get better looks because they're not going to try and stack the box because they have to worry about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. So it gives us better looks in the ground game.
No, I agree there. And I was happy overall with the offensive performance, but this is this is what we talk about when we, I mean, there was quite a few bad balls, like I said, like there was some good, there was some bad. I mean, there was some throws you watch Jalen making. Yeah, that's a bad ball. That's a bad throw. It just needs to be better. There was that, but why am I'm not trying to make Jalen Hurts a statue. What are you talking about? But you got to be able to throw the ball. See, there's the thing. Josh Allen. Yeah, he ran all over the place, didn't he? Oh, he underthrew 3 receivers. Oh, yeah, sure he did. I know. But Josh Allen can also stand back in the pot and absolutely fucking destroy you with his arm when he wants to, because that's the difference, right? And you have to be able to beat people with your arm in this league when it comes to big games and against good defenses. That's just the straight cold facts. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be able to beat teams with your arm if you want to be a quarterback that's winning anything in the NFL. And I know what he can do against average teams, below average teams, bad teams. This was the thing last year. We didn't beat anybody that was a winning record, anybody that was a playoff team. And this is a good early season matchup where you've got an eye test game against a team that's going to be a playoff team. Unless something completely goes to hell and high water with the Vikings, they're going to be a playoff team. So this is a good test. You see where you match up. I want to see him go out and ball out in this game. And that says a lot, and it can go a long way in the early season direction of where the momentum goes and what the feelings are about Jalen's ability to lead this team a long way this year.
Yeah. And he said Davis and Dean need more snaps. Dean, I can understand why Dean's not seeing it, because you got Kaiser White and then you got TJ Edwards, who Edwards saw every snap. He had White, who was used all over the field, and he played. Then you got Epps, who was all over the field too. Both of them had great games. So I feel like Dean's going to be the guy that's going to progress, and then he'll wind up getting more snaps, but he's going to be slow. With Davis, I feel like they're seeing Fletcher, Cox, and Hargrave during the contract year, so they're trying to get as much out of them this year as they can, knowing they're going to walk. You got, of course, Milton Williams, who is playing well. You got the guy you got Tupele, who had that great rush that forced the interception yesterday. I see him getting a little bit less. Or he might get the same, but one way you get Davis, it's like, how are you going to get Davis more snaps unless you cut back on everybody? I'm hoping that's what they do. But this is a good problem that they have 4 or 5 defensive tackles that can play, that they can divvy up a rotation out of. This is a good problem to have. And if the problem is, we need to get Jordan Davis on the field, I'd rather have that problem than who are we going to get, because these guys are playing too much time and there's not enough depth. I'm fine with this problem as long as they fix it early. Say, take like a couple snaps off of both Cox and Hargrave and get those 5 or 6 snaps to Jordan Davis. That way, instead of having 20 to 22 snaps, he has close to 30. Because I feel like if he has that, that's half the snaps, and I feel like people will be more happy with that. I don't agree with that. Have Davis should start over Cox.
See,
you don't need him to start.
That's ridiculous, right?
You have,
but they need to be on the field, right?
Yeah. As long as you get them on the field more, you got that rotation where every guy could rotate in and out. That's what you want. You want every guy to be fresh, not be tired because he's on so much, and then you have a guy come in and he only plays 5 snaps. You want every guy who with different looks to get on the field. I love that problem. But I feel like Dean's going to be the one that's going to have a little bit of trouble, because I also feel like they want to see if he can stay healthy or not. And with the 2 guys in front of them, there's no rush with him. But I do want
you can't play him 3. You can't play him 3 play. Didn't he play three snaps or something silly? Like you can't play 3 snaps and find out if a guy can stay healthy. I mean, that's not really going to do anything for you.
Says, I feel we still don't have an identity on defense, and we finally have pieces.
I agree. I agree completely, Johnny.
It's the first game, though. I don't expect to have an identity right away. I hope we get one and get one in the next few weeks. But it's also week 1. You're not going to have an identity that quick. It's just that with how the preseason is, where no one plays, you don't know what you're going to have, because you tend to play the starters less and less. and you focus on the backups. 3 of Hurts throws were knocked out by 2 players that came untouched. Pass blocking was garbage, and pass rush was 2 facts.
I know. It's always everybody else's fault beside Jalen Hurts. I know.
Davis should start over Cox. Just like I said, disagree with that one. Why did we draft him? Cox is done because him and Hargrave are on their contract year. This is the last year of the contracts. They want to replace them.
Because you got to get younger. Because you got to get younger at positions at some point. You got to get younger. You got to try to build depth, and you got to try to, build a situation where, going forward, you've got great players that are ready to step in when your great players that are currently in those positions are no longer, able to perform at the level that they once were. So that's why you're trying to build all that depth so you don't have to worry about it once that time comes. You want it already here.
And I agree with that. He collapsed the
did.
pocket and disrupted
That's why he
the
needs
run.
to play more.
But what is Jordan Davis's one weakness? It's his gas tank. He tends to go ball out, and then he lasts like 5 plays, and then he needs to come off the field for like 4 plays. That was his thing in Georgia that he had issues with, and that's what they're working on. I find that he did 20 plays week 1. I want to see him get a little bit more week 2, a little bit more week 3. I wanted to see them progress him up to like a 4 starter snap rate. But when that's his big issue, you can't just rush into it right away. You got to work him into it, because that's when mistakes and injuries happen, because you do that. And you forked over a first rounder to draft him. You want to get enough out of him, but then knowing that you got Cox and Hargrave, 2 Pro Bowl defensive tackles in different years ahead of him, you can afford to not rush his 4-time snaps. Cox can go to Dallas right now. He is done. He played well.
Listen. Okay, hold on, Daniel. Hold on, because this is just ridiculous at this point. Okay, this is all fucking stupid. It's really silly. Okay, and we wanted to sit here and talk about Jonathan Gannon and his impact and all this, and where we were talking about whether, like, in week 1 of a fucking new season, whether certain guys are done. Okay, This is just absolutely ridiculous. I've had enough of it. Now, first of all, Jonathan Gannon, when we first hired the dude last year, if Steven was here, he would tell you, this is how funny this is. Remember the movie Grandma's Boy? Okay, remember the scene in Grandma's Boy where I hate your face? That's literally the minute we hired Jonathan Gannon, that was my fault. I hate your face. And I thought of the scene from Grandma's Boy where that's when it's like, it's when you're trying to, like, I can't remember the character's name, but the scene I'm talking about. Anybody that's in the chat room that's seen the Grandma's Boy movie, seen the movie Grandma's Boy, knows the scene I'm talking about. The I hate your face scene. So that's where I'm at with Jonathan Gannon. I just don't like, he was a head coaching candidate last offseason. Yeah, that's because he's a good-looking young white dude with a pretty smile, and this is the new MO to become a head coach. Just go ask Sean McVay how you become a new head coach in this. Everybody wants to find the new Sean McVay. So if you're young, you're white, and you're pretty with a good look, with a good-looking face and a somewhat pretty smile, these teams want to interview you for some reason. I don't know what it is. That's just the new thing. Like that's their fad. So you get an interview, but that doesn't make him any good. It really doesn't make him any good. And this is really where, like, the conversation should sway to, is what Jonathan Gannon needs to do going forward in order to help this defense start to play better. Because he was a huge impact on anything that we want to talk about, what players were or were not doing defensively week 1. He had a huge impact on that. What adjustments need to be made? I mean, how do you stop Justin Jefferson week 2? How do you slow down Dalvin Cook week 2? All these guys that when you look at it, you go, that this is a much better offense than what we were facing in Detroit. How do you make those adjustments that you need to make to slow those guys down and make sure that offense just boat race you off the field? Because that could happen too.
No, I agree with you. And then when I looked at the game, there's plus and minuses to the game against the Lions. Of course, AJ Brown is a plus. The running game is a plus. I do feel like, for the most part, Jalen Hurts was a plus because he didn't turn the ball over at all, and he made plays in the pass game and the running game. I felt like if you look at it, of course, Jordan Davis in the time that he had, he was a plus. And then I feel like Kaiser, White, and Epps were a plus. Negatives, of course, was the fact that Devontae Smith didn't get a catch at all, even though he dropped the one pass that he had thrown his way open, and he had another target that went over him. Of course, another minus, of course, was the secondary. I felt like at times they just got beat. And then, of course, the stopping the run. Whenever Davis was not on the field, they gave him 10 yards of carry. And then, of course, the big con was Jonathan Gannon. What is he going to do to fix this team and get them ready for the Vikings? What is he going to do? What big thing is he going to tweak at? What do you feel like he should do to tweak it?
Well, I just look at this defense and you go, look at all the talent. You've got so many good players. You need to figure. I don't give a fuck what you want your scheme to be, what you think your scheme should be, or any of that. My number one thing with coaching at any level is putting your players in the proper positions to be able to get the most out of them. Like, that's really, for me, like, these players have plenty of talent. Like, that'll figure itself out, but you've got to put them in good positions as a coaching staff from a game plan and from a scheme perspective to get the most out of what, those skill sets are supposed to be. And like, it's not like you don't have to be cute. There's like, you've got a great roster. You've got a ton of talent on that defense. There's maybe there's some things you could do to maybe stay out of the way more. Maybe that's part of it too, is where it's like you try to scheme things up and get way too cute with things where you just don't need to. You can just let guys like, hey, you guys, you four up front, my defensive front. I don't what do you need to tell your defensive front that they don't already know? You know what I'm saying? They know what their job is. They know what they're trying to do. Which guys want to get after the quarterback, which guys are attracting the most attention, who's getting the double team, who's going to have, the one-on-one advantage because, this guy is getting double teamed in the middle. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm the X's and O's guys that wants to sit here and try to tell you what I would do from a scheme perspective. But I know watching it that there's things that can be done on the defensive side when you're talking about a game plan and when you're talking about defensive play calling that's going to put all these players that we've brought in and the way we've constructed this defense to have, hey, this guy's skill is this guy's, best skill is this, and we want to get the most out of what these guys are doing. There's way more that could have been done defensively from a coaching standpoint that would have put those guys in that position. Hassan Reddick dropping back in coverage is a great example, and I don't want to harp on it too much because, I need my linebackers. I need my edge rushers to be able to drop back in coverage and do a little bit of that too. That needs to be a thing where I can, put a little wrinkle in a defense where you can do that. We think, the team thinks you're blitzing and you're coming after the quarterback, and next thing you know, you drop back in coverage and you're there in the path of, the crossing route underneath to be able to make a play on a ball that, the quarterback pre-snap thinks, okay, that's going to be, that's going to be open, right? And you leak back in coverage and make a play. I need that, but good Lord. I
feel like this is the game where
90% of your play call should be getting after the quarterback and trying to smack him in the mouth.
And this is the game where Minnesota didn't really get Irv Smith involved. He coming back from a major injury, he missed all last year. He had no catches. They relied a lot on just the wide receivers and of course the running backs in the passing game. You can kind of afford to not drop Hassan Reddick back in the coverage as much because I felt like they did it last game because of TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson was a threat against us. I don't think Irv Smith's going to be as involved. So you can use that extra man in Reddick to go pass rush on Cousins and try and force them into making bad throws because one more extra guy is going to do better, especially when you have the bodies in the middle and then you got Sweat and Graham on the outside. I feel like it's going to create chaos. And any small mistake that he made, you saw it in the game against the Lions where we created a little bit of chaos on Goff. He threw the ball, it got tipped and intercepted, and it got taken back. So any chaos that we can create is better for the defense.
No, and I feel you there, but I mean, okay, so again, it's one thing to drop Reddick back in coverage if you feel like, yeah, he's an elite edge rusher and he's a guy that can do that. But like there was plays like there was a situation where Josh Sweat dropped back in coverage, and that's like a situation where you're like, okay, like I get it. I want him to be able to do that, but Josh Sweat's best thing is get after the quarterback, with 1,000% effort on every single snap, and I have zero reason for him to need to drop back in coverage. Not with what talent is supposed to be on this defense. I should be able to scheme something up where somebody else can cover whatever guy Josh Sweat becomes responsible for there. If we're worried about the tight end or the running back out of the backfield or whatever it might be, somebody else can have that responsibility. But Josh Sweat needs to be getting after the quarterback. That's just silliness to watch him drop back in some sort of zone coverage at one point. That's what I thought about, just getting cute. Like, what is that? It's just not necessary. It's not needed.
No, it's definitely not. You got him at the play more man on the outside. They should be able to bring a linebacker or safety all day. Sweat is paid to hit the quarterback. Yeah, that's what the defensive ends are there for, to go after the quarterback. And Reddick will do a little bit of each since he's the outside linebacker there that they use more the rush.
Right. Certain guys can do, they're versatile enough to do that, but like you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? Like the old saying of trying to fit the square peg in the round hole. That's not going to work. Like that's what you do when I watch you drop Josh Sweat back in coverage. It's like, what is that? Like that's not like that's not productive.
Yeah, that's not.
And it happened more than once. Let's be honest. It happened more than once. It wasn't like it was just a one-time thing.
Yeah. Him and Graham should focus just on pass rush. That's why you have Reddick there. He can rotate both sides and then drop in the coverage. I feel like you're not going to need to do that much, like I said, because they don't use the tight end as much. But
my secondary is filthy, is it not? If we're just being honest, Bradbury had the pick six, right? That was a pretty play with two new guys, right? Two new guys.
Kaiser White got the tip and went to Bradbury.
Mm-hmm. Bradbury for the pick six.
Epps played every snap. He looked good. Mize, like he said, he had a bad tackle that was created into a touchdown on the first touchdown for the Lions. But afterwards, he corrected everything. I felt like he played well. Of course, we know Darius Slay and what he does.
Yeah.
He plays well. The only thing that is kind of weird is the fact that we go 4-3-5. Because if you notice that because we have like Gardner Johnson, which we've created as like a floater. We let him float around. But then they let Kaiser White float around too. So it's like you got two guys kind of floating around. I feel like you should only have one, and you should make sure that the middle of the field is going, not just go wherever you want with two guys.
I feel you there. I think my bigger point is more if my secondary is this good, I'm going to let my dogs eat up front then. Like, there's no reason I shouldn't be getting after the quarterback up front because I've got a solid secondary. You're always worried about getting burnt by the blitz, right? Oh, if I blitz, I could get burnt. Okay, well, that's why I've got a solid secondary. That's why I look back there now and I go, I got Darius Slay, I've got James Bradbury, I've got two solid safeties. My secondary is pretty damn good. And I'll live in, I'll be okay with the idea if we get burnt, on the blitz and we don't get there. I still trust my secondary to be able to make a play and step up and do what they got to do. But that's coaching scared. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, if you blitz and you don't get there and they make a play on you because they burn you on the blitz, then they burn you on the blitz. That's the way it goes. But I'm still coming after you then. It's not like that's going to make me shy away from coming after you. I'm doing what I got to do. I've got guys up front that do what they do best. I'm going to keep, you're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep coming after them because, Josh Sweat, this is what you do best. You get after the quarterback, Reddick is what you do best. You get after the quarterback, and up front defensively, I know with Fletcher Cox and with Jordan Davis running the football, I feel pretty solid there too. So I don't, for me, it's like you when you drop guys like that back in coverage, you're trying to, I'm trying to protect my secondary a little bit. I want to give them a little bit of extra help. Well, my secondary doesn't need extra help. They're okay. Put them on an island. They'll be okay. They'll be okay. I know something, big plays will happen sometimes, but you put that secondary on an island, they'll be okay more times than not. Those guys can lock it down there, and lock it down on the outside. And then over the middle of the field with the safeties.
But I do feel like the number one priority is to stop Jefferson. And if you have to use Gardner Johnson to go over top of whoever's covering Jefferson, do that. That's why he's the floater. If he's floating around like that, let him float around and cover over top. So
I'll
that
have
you can-
Darius Slay
Yeah.
follow Justin Jefferson everywhere that he goes, and then I'll have Gardner Johnson kind of float around as a help defender, at all times, and then I'll trust that Bradbury will be okay. We've got Thielen on the other side, and Bradbury. That's why you're here now. Your job is you're going to have a lot of responsibility locking him down. You're not going to have as much help because the help's going to be shaded towards Jefferson, understandably, but still. Bradbury and you should still have good enough, a good enough defense all the way around where you're looking at how your defense is constructed and go, I'm still not worried about Bradbury being on an island outside with Thielen. Yes, a couple big plays might happen, and that's fine. But, yeah, if I'm going to beat Kirk Cousins, I'm not just going to let him stand back there in the pocket and have all types of time. You're coming after him. You're punching him in the mouth every chance you get.
You need to trust the defensive line that they're going to get to him, and then they're going to stop the run.
I'm really tired of watching him shred us, to be honest. Every time we play Kirk Cousins, he just shreds the shit out of us.
So just trust that, and then use the secondary to stop Jefferson. If that means that Thielen's going to have a good game, but we beat him because it's not explosive and Thielen's more of a possession guy, then so be it. I'd rather have him catch 10 for 100 but not get a touchdown than to have Jefferson catch 4 for 130 and 2 touchdowns. I'd rather have that any day. That means that we're not allowing them to get those big plays on them, and then they're just getting the short yardage plays to move the chains, and then we can score on them, because I feel like we should have a field day on them, because I feel like the Minnesota Vikings defense, it's good, but I think it's getting overrated right now just because of the Green Bay the team that they played that was very depleted. With, of course, no Lazard, half the O-line wasn't there. Like, they relied so much on Jones and on Dillon in that game because they had to, because Rodgers had no one to throw it to. And that's going to be a totally different story with the Eagles, where I feel like we have a weapon at every spot, running back, tight end, and wide receiver. And then it was very interesting to see that they were using Zach Pascal every third down play. And then he had 2 first down plays on third down, which was really good because he only had a couple catches, but they were both on third down. So that means that they can rely on him in pressure situations, even though he's not going to see as many looks as a guy like A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith.
Yeah, I think where the Vikings are going to make you beat them is they want to make you beat them through the air. This idea that Jalen Hurts is going to have the success with his legs, and we mentioned the Vikings. I think their strength defensively is stopping the run. That's where they seem to at least have made the most improvements, and where they were strongest last year. So, this is a game where you want to see Jalen be able to beat them. If we're going to beat them, you want to see him beat them with his arm. You know what I'm saying? It's not that he played bad against the Lions but it was just mad when you watch him as a passer, right? Like, I get it. Like, oh, well, look, did you see what he ran for? Yeah, but he's not a running back. And at some point, I don't want you to be a running back playing the quarterback position anymore. I need it to be the other way around. And it still looks that way. It still looks like you're a running back playing the quarterback position at times. Or if that's the mindset that he has with it. And, I want to see him, be able to beat good defenses with his arm when you need him to. It hasn't been anything we've seen him do at any point yet in his career. That's the next step. And this is a good early season opportunity. We'll have plenty of those conversations late in the year as we get into playoff time and we're talking about getting down the stretch drive. But this is a good, early season situation to be able to show that he's ready to take the next step, and that all these things that we've wanted him to improve on in the offseason, those things have been worked on, and we can see it with our own eyes now. I think this is a good time.
I think this is the perfect game to get Dallas Goedert into the offense early, because I feel like their linebackers aren't going to cover the tight end well. I felt like at times when Tanyan got the ball, he was open a lot easier, but then, of course, Rodgers couldn't find him half the time. So when he was open, he caught the ball and he got a few yards after the catch. And I feel like Goddard could have the same success. And if you get him into the game earlier, it's going to have a ripple effect for the Vikings defense where they're going to have to start covering him, and they're going to shrink into the middle, and it's going to create more options on the outside with them prepping to cover Goddard because he beats them early. So I feel like you're going to want to get Goddard into the offense as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get your playmakers involved regardless. But, yeah, I like the idea of where you're coming from as far as trying to exploit what might be a weakness for their defense and what their secondary is. But that's part of staying committed to that, and the idea that, if you put that into the game plan, the idea doesn't become, okay, we want to try to get the ball to Dallas Goedert, and then, things that we saw at times still in the Vikings or still in the Lions game that concern me because it's similar to the similar stuff that we saw the last year, but you're getting off your first read way too quickly. And if your first read isn't AJ Brown and it becomes Dallas Goedert or something, like now it's like, will he get off of Goddard too quickly because he wants to go see, what's AJ Brown? Is he open? What's the deal there? And that, and all these things that, again, I need to see with my own eyes, improve and happen before I'm ready to feel comfortable with the situation. But yeah, I was trying to read Angry Bear's comment. The only thing I hope is that Hurts is for real when they use those 2 first-round picks on edge rushers. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be what it is. I mean, he might end up being the guy that you end up having to ride with as your franchise quarterback just because, that's the way situations are. There's worse guys in the league that are considered franchise quarterbacks that are, the starting quarterbacks for organizations. But, I mean, it's for me, it's more just, I know. Like I don't think Jalen's bad, but there's these things that you want to see. Like this ceiling for this team is very high. If he takes, a big step forward, and there's so much progress where you watch a guy that goes from a guy that struggles to do these things that we talk about with the reads and actually consistently being able to throw the ball down the field, and exploiting defenses when they give you coverages that you have the ability to exploit them if the good quarterbacks, that's what they do. They line up, they see it, they exploit it. All these things that he can improve on. If that happens, we know the ceiling for this team is very high. But the ceiling for this team, you could just be a first-round playoff team too. And, I don't know if I want to be stuck in a situation where you're just, you make the playoffs every year, but you're struggling to win a playoff game for 7 or 8 years because of who your quarterback is. I don't want to be that guy. Andy Dalton won a lot of games for the Bengals, but they also never won a playoff game with him there because, it's not that he's bad, but he is what he is, right? And good Lord, Jalen is, at this point already, as good of a quarterback that Andy Dalton ever was in his career, and I expect Jalen to be a much better quarterback than Andy Dalton was in his career. But you get what I'm saying. The gist of what I'm saying is that there's more to it than just being, he's not bad. Yeah, I get that, but I need you to get to a certain level if we're going to go lift another Lombardi.
My prediction for the game is I got Eagles 27-21. It could be the same situation where we go up early and then maybe Gannon gets the defense into that same situation in the fourth where instead of continuing to apply pressure towards the quarterback, he starts to drop into coverage and he plays that game. And then that's when, of course, we know Cousins is great playing from behind. And when teams start to do that, he has the most fourth quarter touchdown passes since 3 years ago going forward. Because of that, he takes advantage of the open spots in the middle of the field when you give him too much. And I feel like it's going to make the matchup close to where we could be up by 2 touchdowns going into the fourth, and then we give up some points because of the coverage. And I feel like we can't do that. But I still feel like it's going to be 27-21.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to think of a predict game. You know what I mean? Because I'm kind of in a position where the minute I say anything negative, I'm going to get labeled as like a pessimist by people in our chat room. So I don't really know what to say about it. But yeah, I mean, I don't feel like, geez, we're in prime time and we're going to win by a touchdown over the Vikings. Okay.
I like the fact because they're home. To me, it's very Yeah, it's very different playing home because we always play well at the link, especially against the Vikings. Whereas the Vikings are usually like a team where they play great in Minnesota and then they're 500 on the road. They've always
Yeah.
been doing that the past couple of years, so that's why I'm going with that.
Yeah, I feel you, I guess. I mean, it's tough to
Like you
gauge
said,
it right now.
like he said, part of it was we took our foot off the throat too early, and I felt that way
That's
too.
possible.
Yeah,
That's possible. See, this is where he won the game for us, did he? Okay, if you say so. I mean, so I'm just not going to argue with people like that. Like, it's just silly. Like,
he's not entirely wrong, but it's like you got to pick and choose with him what you want to say. Like he was very effective in the running game. He was effective in certain situations of the passing game, but he can still improve with it. And some of the throws that he made, star drives that after they started and punted it over, the Lions went and scored right afterwards, where he could have continued to drive, and we could have scored or killed more time off the clock. So you can go both ways with it.
yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's early in the year and it's hard to gauge things until you kind of see it. But yeah, I mean, I would like this. It's a game where you look at it and you go, in a lot of ways, it's you don't want to say like a week 2 game's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2.5-point favorites. Yeah, like usually you give the home team 3 just by default. So there's things there like this is a pick'em game, and I think it's a big game early on, like to see where you kind of stand against your good teams because your schedule doesn't get any easier. It's not like we've got an easy schedule here at any point. Dallas not having Dak helps, but they're going to be a mess anyway. That didn't take long. I said Dallas was going to implode and be an absolute mess, and here they are after week 1, and it's just a complete train wreck. So that didn't take long.
They didn't even play well when he was playing.
No,
and then
they were garbage when he was in there. Like, it didn't take long for that to become an absolute train wreck. Holy shit.
It's just like I said, the experiment of them trying to get rid of Cooper because they felt like they could use that money on defense. It killed the offense because now teams are double covering Lamb. And on top of that, they lost Wilson. I felt like they thought they were going to keep Wilson, and then he went to the Dolphins, and that just killed them because they felt like they could have kept him in place of Cooper, and then they would have Wilson and Lamb. It would have lessened the blow a little bit because Wilson got hot late last year, but then when he left, it was like, oh, we just lost 2 wide receivers, and then Gallup isn't even playing right now because he's hurt. I don't even know when he's supposed to come back, but you're very dependent on Lamb, and then it makes Dalton Schultz dependent too, and then they're already splitting carries between Zeke and Potter now, so it's like it's hard for either one of those guys to get going when teams are kind of playing against the run already, stuffing the box, and then just double covering Lamb. It's causing the quarterback to force throws, and now without a Dak there for possibly 6 to 8 weeks is what they're saying.
Watch
right
it be
now.
better without Dak. I mean, like, watch. Like, this is the type of, like, watch. They'll be better without Dak for some weird fucking reason. Like, it's so weird.
It could be a thing where they try and run it could be a thing where they try and run the ball more and not force throws, and it might be more successful where instead of forcing it to Lamb, they might throw it to Schultz to open up Lamb. It could be something crazy like that. I wouldn't even be surprised because the one game Rush played last year against the Vikings on the road in Minnesota on, I believe it was Sunday night, he had a great game. He helped them win the game on the road, and it was a must-win game that they had at the time. And it kept the machine going because right afterwards, I think they went on a bye, and then Dak came back. So it was a win that they were hoping to get with them not there, and they were able to get it. So, but there's a difference between covering one game and then 6 games possibly. So that's going to be the situation that they're in. But for the Eagles after the Monday night, we got the Washington, then we got Jacksonville, and then we got the Cowboys and Cardinals before we go, I believe, on the bye. So I feel like
Cardinals look bad. Cardinals look awful.
So I feel
like
so I feel like this is a must-win game. This is that game where you're like, okay, we could see Minnesota being above 500, being the division winner. You want to get this win because it's going to pay dividends down the road for all the people saying, "Oh, he's 1-11 against teams above 500." We're expecting the Vikings to be above 500, so you want to get that win right away.
And Washington won week 1, and that there was ups and downs in that game. You look at it and you're like, oh geez, like Carson looked ugly for a moment. The good and the bad and the ugly. That's Carson Wentz still to this day, right? It's always been. Threw 2 picks on back-to-back plays. Look like he's going to cough the game away. And I was like, yeah, well, Carson's a loser. You know how I feel about his heart, and his will to win. And I was like, well, so they've got no chance to come back, but they came back and won that game. So, and then he threw 4 touchdowns for the first time since 2017 when he blew his knee out against the Rams. So I don't know. I told you, I think Washington will be pretty good because I think Dallas will be really bad. I think the Giants will be really bad.
But I will say that Jacksonville didn't capitalize because
no, they didn't. But Jacksonville's getting there. But they had their opportunities. But that's why I don't think that game against Jacksonville will be easy for us either. You know what I'm saying?
Because I was watching the game. Wentz got hot early, hit the 2 touchdowns, but then he got cold and had 2 interceptions. And Jacksonville didn't capitalize right away.
Jacksonville scored 14 points off those 2 interceptions, but then they had all their opportunities late and they didn't capitalize.
Which is what I was saying. They had opportunities late, they didn't capitalize, and then it allowed Washington to clean up and then get back into what they were doing early on.
But ideally, you'd look at it and you'd want to go, we beat Minnesota week 2, Washington wins their game. Now we're both 2-0 as we play week 3, and that's all of a sudden a big game. You want early division control, right? And that becomes a huge game. That's ideally where you want to be at 2-0, and we're both going to end up playing for the early division, advantage in week 3 in a game that's going to have all types of feelings involved with it. Let's be honest. It just is.
He said, do I drop Gallup or Parker for Wilson?
I don't know. I don't play fantasy football. Go to the fantasy football guys and ask them.
Oh no, I'm dropping Parker because I don't like anything about the Patriots offense right now. They just look bad, and they just lost Ty Montgomery. Gallup is going to come back from injury, and he's going to have a primary option on that team when he plays. Parker, you have no idea. At least Wilson is going to be the starting running back for the next 6 weeks, and when he played well. And of course, just like you said, I have Montgomery and Penny. Montgomery just got put on the IR, so unless he's talking about the Bears running back, Montgomery, 16-team Chiefs money league. My wide receivers are Debo and Sutton, and I have Claypool. Yeah, drop Parker for Wilson. I go with that because I feel like you're going to get a lot more out of Gallup later in the season than you would with Parker.
Daniel, I guess, is the fantasy football guy. I'm not a fantasy football guy, so I'm not really the guy to try to.
Monday is must win for me for the Birds. I expect last year. I agree with that. The Giants played Cowboys week 3 after Cincinnati. They could be 0-3, which is tough to get to rebound off of 0-3. Once that happens, it's like you got to go on a streak. But we've seen teams win the Super Bowl after that. It's just slim or none. But before we talk about the rest of the games from week 1, how about you tell everybody about becoming an A2D member?
Well, becoming an A2D member, very simple, only $9.99 a month. Get all the access to all the gambling picks if you're a degenerate like me, but you get weekly appearances on shows, member-only streams, shout-outs, Money Pop podcast with Willie Vegas and Money Moss and the boys. So all types of perks for just $9.99 a month. It's the best deal you're going to find. Very easy to become an A2D member. So updates come right to your phone every week. Simple as it can get.
Now, speaking of the rest of week 1, what are some of your standout performances or some of the games that you were kind of shocked about finish-wise?
You know, a lot of people are going to say last night's game, but I wasn't surprised by that. Home dogs on the road, home dogs on Monday Night Football, like to start the year over the past 10 years. It's like kind of a trend sort of thing.
I was surprised. I was surprised that they fumbled the ball 3 times on the goal line.
Yeah, that was all really weird. Yeah. But like I felt like a lot of people felt Denver was going to roll, and I just knew that game was going to be one of those really tight fought contests that it was going to be really tight throughout, and you were going to have a tight finish.
Yeah.
Denver should have won that game. I don't know what the hell happened at the end. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But I don't know if I was necessarily surprised by the outcome. I actually thought Seattle had a chance to pull that upset because
I would have
way too much money on Denver in that game.
I would have tried to get the first down and get out of bounds, and then, of course, go and kick the ball because I feel like 64 in Seattle is very tough, especially with the weather that goes on there. I would have tried to go for the first down, get out, and then you would have had like a kick inside between 50 and 58 yards, depending on where the completion is. It would have been much better because I think how close he got was it was a little bit wide left and it went 62 yards instead of 64. So had you have taken the chance to go downfield, got out, you would have had a better kick in place there because
I mean the bottom line with that is you have a minute left. You got all these timeouts. It's 3rd and 5. Right? Okay, so 3rd and whatever. So now you get it to 4th and 5 with a minute to play. I didn't trade for Russell Wilson and pay him $250 million and all this nonsense to try to kick a 64-yard field goal after wasting 50 seconds off the fucking clock. I mean, good Lord. Call a timeout right there. Let's go talk about what the hell we're going to do on 4th and 5. And the ball game's in your hands right there anyway. If we don't get a hit on 4th and 5, it's over regardless. So this idea of, I don't know if they felt like, okay, we can't leave a lot of time because if we kick a field goal, then we don't want to leave them a ton of time to go down. So I don't know but that's a stupid thought process. I know right there on 4th and 5, there's my football game. I got to go convert on 4th and 5 before I worry about anything else. But I'm definitely going for it on 4th and 5. Like that's why Russell Wilson's now my quarterback. I mean, this is nonsense.
You invested all that. You invested all that assets to bring him in. And that's the type of situation you brought him in for. Is that 4th down? You need to get yardage. You need to move move the sticks, and you go and kick a 64-yarder when you have Russell Wilson there. And it's kind of funny because look at it. Drew Lock didn't even play because he's hurt. So they used Geno Smith, and Geno Smith had a pretty good game. There was some situations where he read the ball well on both touchdowns, and he was able to just evade and get it to the open man, and he looked great, and he was already on the team from last year. So it was like they made the trades. You got a guy in Shelby Harris who played a good game that they got from Denver, and then of course they got the draft picks that they used. This could be a blessing for Seattle where I don't expect them to make the playoffs, but at least they can get that rebuild started now instead of next year, the year after, when they had paid Russell Wilson. A lot of people are like, they got rid of him so they didn't have to pay him. They were in that situation where they felt like it was
their window's closed. Right. Yeah. Their window of winning a Super Bowl was closed at this point.
Yeah, and they made the right move, and then they traded him at the right time. And they started it early, and they got a lot back in return. That's the big thing.
And Noah Fant's a good player. Like I know, Drew Lock is whatever, but Noah Fant's a really good player.
And with me, it was Noah Fant and Shelby Harris and the draft picks. Those were the important things.
Yeah. And Drew Lock can sling it a little bit. And if you fall into something by accident with Drew Lock, then okay, so be it. But you're kind of like, okay, we'll probably be bad enough where if we don't have a good enough quarterback, where most of the time we'll probably be bad enough where, if it comes down to it, we should be in one of the positions to get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft next year. So we're cool with that too. But
then of course you had Chris Carson's retire. But then what do you do with one of those picks? You drafted Kenneth Walker. You got him. You drafted 2 tackles, one on the left, one on the right. You made moves. You brought in a corner, a receiver. But you brought in help. It's kind of funny that they trade Russell Wilson, and then that's when they decide to draft 2 tackles to add to that team, but it is what it is. They had the extra ammunition and they used it, and they felt like Russell Wilson isn't there anymore to make plays out of broken situations. So now they do have to ensure on the line, give the quarterback more time to make plays, and it's working. They're 1-0 right now. Like I said, do I feel like they're gonna win a lot of games? No. I feel like they could win 5-6 games, yes, but this was a big first game for them at home against Russell Wilson and the Broncos. I feel like the Broncos were overrated going into the season.
Yes,
I feel like they're going to finish last in that division because that's a tough division. I think the Raiders are better than them, and I felt like even in a loss, the Raiders showed it with how competitive they were against the Chargers. And then we all saw how well the Chiefs did. The Chiefs, like Tyreek Hill, and they didn't have Tyreek Hill, and it didn't matter because Patrick Mahomes had one of his best games without him in a big onslaught against the Cardinals. That was a big thing for me to notice, was the fact that Mahomes killed it without him. 5 touchdowns, and he could have thrown away the fourth quarter because he did everything in 3 quarters.
And speaking of getting blitzed, there was a stat this morning I saw that said Jalen Hurts got blitzed 15 times on Sunday. That was the second most times in the league this week, outside of Patrick Mahomes, who got blitzed 21 times. And while getting blitzed 21 times, he shredded the shit out of that defense through 4 touchdown passes, 5 touchdown passes, whatever it was, right? They're just completely unstoppable because that's what great quarterbacks do. So this argument, I keep hearing people say, oh, well, Jalen got blitzed a ton on Sunday. Okay, great. Well, great quarterbacks fucking destroy the blitz. So, I don't need to hear this idea that he got blitzed so much that that's what made him struggle. Great quarterbacks aren't supposed to struggle against the blitz. What you're supposed to do is eat up the blitz and say, okay, go ahead, blitz me. I'm going to make you pay for blitzing me. That's what great quarterbacks do. So that's that's just I don't like that argument. You know what I mean? It's I think the evidence around the league, when you look at the great quarterbacks and you look at the evidence of, look at them when they're under pressure. Great. The great quarterbacks, when they get blitzed and they have pressure, on them, that's the times when they seem to be at their best, right? It's and now I get it if you're under just constant, just getting smoked on every play, that could take its effect on you. But blitzing, I mean, yeah, teams are going to blitz. That's fine. Just because you get blitzed doesn't mean that you're getting abused. There's he wasn't protected. Why? Because he got blitzed 15 times. That doesn't equal not being protected. There's things that there's other things that go into that on his end. That can help that blitz situation. If you recognize the blitz at the line of scrimmage, there's changes you can make to the play as far as what you want to do in the passing game to help you get the ball out a lot quicker to make that blitz not a concern. But I don't know if it's intentional on Jalen's part, but it seems like where he's the blitz is coming. That's fine. I'll make a guy miss and then we'll make something happen. But you can't just go into I know they're blitzing and that's fine, but I trust my ability to make a guy miss one-on-one. Well, yeah, you might make a guy miss every one. You're going to make guys miss. That's fine. But I'm not counting on you making a guy miss every time, right? I don't think that's how many times you see a guy come free and you're Jalen stepped up and ran. Oh, great. He avoided the pressure and stepped up through the pocket and ran for 8 yards and it was a positive play. But why can't that adjustment be made at the line of scrimmage? And now I see him go fucking hit, A.J. Brown on some sort of, quick slant route that they put in place because there's a blitz coming, and next thing you know, A.J. Brown has a big play in the passing game. Why does it have to be he's always doing something with his legs to impress me? That's not what great quarterbacks do. He is a playmaker, and it's dynamic, and it's something that changes the game offensively from a momentum perspective, and it changes it into your favor a lot, and I'm not naive to that. You know what I'm saying? I understand how he could be a game breaker at times, but we saw last year those same things where it's Jalen could be a game breaker. Yeah, until he goes up against great defenses with great edge rushers and guys that can smack you in the mouth a little bit. And next thing you know, he tries to run a read option around the corner and he gets fucking pile driven into the ground. We saw that happen plenty of times last year too. They didn't have hot reads. I mean, I don't watch the 22, so But what the hell kind of offense doesn't have hot reads built into it? That doesn't make any sense. He didn't have hot reads. See, this is the type of excuses I'm talking about. Like, people seem to make excuses for guys. Like, what type of excuses is that? Well, Jalen couldn't audible because they didn't have any hot reads available. What? I've never heard of an offense with such a thing.
One big
There's
thing
always a hot read available.
He said Wentz or Matt rest of the season. I guess
Wentz or
Matt Ryan. I don't know. I guess Matt Ryan. He's talking about which would you rather have?
Wentz or Matt Ryan the rest of the season? I mean, can I pick neither one? Like, is that the game? I'll go with Wentz because he's younger, I guess. And still, I don't really know.
He said watch the 22. But the big thing with the week 1 that I saw was the play of the Steelers against the Bengals. Joe Burrow looked horrible at times in that game.
That was actually another one I pegged. I tried to stay away from that game because it just had Pittsburgh again. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, right? They're never bad. They might not always be good, but they're never bad. And it's like a game in Cincinnati to start the year. Week 1 things always seem to happen. That's when your fluky things happen. That game was weird to me, and I was like, I'm glad I stayed away from it because it just had that type of feel to it.
When you get a game where you basically had it all locked up at the end of the game, all you had to do was kick the extra point, and then you're good. And, of course, this is why the Steelers gave up, I believe it was the first-round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, is to make plays like he did where he blocked the extra point and he created havoc along the secondary. I thought the big mistake in that game was, how is it you're in overtime? You're the Bengals. Who's your biggest threat on offense? It is Jamar Chase. They didn't throw it to him once in overtime. I don't care if he's double covered. You got to try and get the ball to your best player. And then they didn't even do it at all. So then they turned the ball over. He gave it to Mitchell Trubisky, who we all said was a shitty quarterback. He played okay that game, but down the stretch, what did he do? He found his tight end, Pat Freiermuth, on three straight plays, got yardage, got them inside field goal range, and kicked the game-winning field goal because Cincinnati couldn't find their number one receiver or look at him. I feel like they didn't look at him at all when he had a great game all in the regular time. But in overtime, you want to get the ball to him, and they couldn't even do that. But Trubisky can find Pat Freiermuth, his security bracket, at ease. And like, to me, it doesn't make sense. I know the Steelers' defense is great, but when Jamar Chase has over 100 yards and a touchdown against you, he should still be able to do that in overtime. It's just, I felt like it was bad decision-making at the end of the game in overtime for Cincinnati. And I think teams are going to start a game plan in them a certain way to shut down Chase. And when you do that, it's going to create Joe Burrow, who's going to have to do what he did the year before, and that's he's going to have to force throws, and then he wasn't a top 5 quarterback. So I don't think that they're not going to be bad. I think they're going to be more like, instead of first place, I think that they might be in a fight for first with the Ravens, and it could be a difference between them going 10-6 or like what was it 10-6, 10-7 or 11-6, or one of those two, where either one of those teams could win the division. Because I feel like as long as the Ravens stay healthy, I give them the edge.
Yeah, I mean, that division will be competitive. There's been a lot of change in that division. It seems like every team has gone through some sort of significant change of some kind, whether it's losing players, whether it's losing coaches, whatever it might be. But yeah, I mean, that division's always competitive, and it doesn't look like it's going to be any different this year. Everybody thought Baker Mayfield was going to get his revenge with the Panthers against Cleveland. They almost did, almost let the comeback, and then Cleveland hits the late field goal, right? Steelers find a way to squeak it out against Cincinnati. The Ravens, they took care of business against the Jets, but that division, like, it seems like all those teams are going to play each other tough again, just like it is every single year, no matter whether Jacoby Brissett's playing quarterback for the Browns or whether it's Watson or whoever it might be. Brissett's another guy. You look at him, you go, people like, oh, well, he stinks. He doesn't stink. I mean, he's not good, but he doesn't stink, right? Like, you've got worse options at your quarterback position. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got worse options.
He's going to manage the game.
It's like Mariota with Atlanta. You're like, same thing. Like, I don't like Mariota's probably going to have a decent year with Atlanta. Like, Atlanta's not good, but it's not like Mariota's going to play bad. He's just not going to play good enough to keep his job probably next year. But
he
played okay.
And if the Browns could be like 5-5 going into the bye and they come back and then they get Watson back for that game against the Texans, for the Browns, that's a win. If they can be 500 going into that, which is possible if he can manage the game. You do have Cooper if he can start making plays. You got a very good running game with Hunt and with Chubb. And then you got a couple tight ends that you can throw to, and that defense is no slouch. They just have to be consistent, and it all starts with Brissett. But that defense that division's going to be tough this year. And I look at some of the other games, like we all hyped up the Colts. They get Matt Ryan. We're like, they're
who hyped up the Colts? I didn't hype up the Colts.
No, not you. I'm just saying. The Colts were hyped up in general. Everybody said, not in general, that the weakness last year was Wentz. So they get rid of him. They traded him. They bring in Matt Ryan. And week 1, they tied the Texans. They made the Texans look good. Davis Mills looked better than Matt Ryan yesterday.
Yeah, he's good. He'll be okay. He'll be a guy that'll find his way to have a solid NFL career. He'll probably be a career backup, but he'll be okay.
He's doing a lot with as little of offensive players as he can.
Yeah, I'm with you. And if it wasn't for the Colts, I mean, the Texans maybe took their foot off. I don't know what happened there, but the Colts just get lucky with a big fourth quarter rally to even send that game to overtime to begin with. But they had no business being in that game.
They brought in O.J. Howard like a week ago, and then he has 2 touchdown catches for the Texans. That was a big pickup for them after training camp. They picked him up. That was kind of like a spot where
you don't have a lot of playmakers. It's like, hey, it's amazing. Hey, this is a guy that could play. Played at a high level at one point. We don't really have much competition or anybody playing at a high level there. Why not bring in a guy like that and he gets an opportunity, and now you maybe find somebody in your offense that there's a little bit of a connection there.
Yeah, and then
it seems like good quarterbacks, they love their tight ends, don't they? That is their safety blanket. You talk about it.
But you got Cooks on the outside, you got O.J. Howard right there at tight end, and like that's 2 weapons that you have now, and they have a lot not invested, but they have a lot of high hopes in Damian Pierce at running back. And then, of course, you got Davis Mills. It could be bright for him, like not saying, like I said, with teams that they're going to be a winning team, but they can compete this year. These young guys play well and develop. Who knows? Davis Mills could turn out to be a very good, solid quarterback. And you could build around that, given weapons, instead of having to draft somebody, and which is always the case with teams. It's like if you don't have to invest in a quarterback like that, and you just do everything else, unless there's a top tier quarterback like this year, there's Bryce Young. This year,
there's not just Bryce Young though. I mean, this quarterback class? I like it. Not just Bryce Young, and not just C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. But,
I think he's looked bad. I think he's looked bad early on. C.J.
Van Dyke from Miami is just, when you look at him, he looks like an NFL quarterback. You know what I mean? He's big, strong. Everything about him athletic. When he stands in the pocket, can make every throw. You look at him, you're like, that's another guy. You're like, man, boy, he looks like he just screams elite, next level prospect sort of thing. So I mean, I think you've got quite a few really good options at the quarterback position for this year's draft, and those are just the guys. When we're talking about week 2, there's always a guy or two that ends up, kind of separating himself throughout the college football season. You go, yeah, he's going to be in that conversation too. So, I mean, I don't, it's way too early to talk about that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's good. Like Davis Mills, a guy like that. You're like, oh, he'll be the franchise quarterback. I don't know that, but I know he's not awful. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like you're just in such a position where you're like, my God, we're going to be in. We're going to be so bad because our quarterback position is just so terrible that it's just killing us. He'll be okay. He might be able to keep your head above water with him, but I would still think they're going to be one of the teams looking to try to draft a quarterback. Atlanta will be in the same position.
I feel like they're not going to. To me, it's if you're not going to get one of the first two picks, and more than likely that's going to be Bryce and Stroud. I feel like it's like go elsewhere with it because I feel like you're saying Van Dyke. There's reservations with him. I don't think he's going to be a first round pick unless he does great in the combine. You do. Yeah, have,
that's the way that position works, right? Like he took over halfway through last year. It's his first full year as a starter. He's a redshirt sophomore, I believe, so he's young. But that seems to be like the new sexy thing in the draft. They want that young kid, and he'll have his chance throughout the year.
And they're not even playing with their second round wide receiver John Mechie because he's hurt. So he's not even playing. And the funny thing is, that's the pick the pick that they used on him was the pick that they got for Deshaun Watson. So they were able to get a playmaker at that position spot, the second rounder in Watson in Mechie that they're not even using yet. So I'm like, okay, you got a weapon here. That's going to be like if he doesn't play this year, that's going to be like a first round pick next year that you didn't even get to use this year. So it's like that's a rookie right there that you get to plug into 2023 without even using them right now. So it's like a plus in that sense. I like what I saw from Houston in the little bit of time because they were able to compete with the Colts who people were picking to win that division because that division is going to be horrible this year.
Yeah,
like we saw the Titans.
The Titans blew the game to the Giants. I mean, good Lord.
I said it from the beginning. I thought that the Titans weren't going to be as good because they're losing the receiver. They're losing the receivers. They've lost players on that team. They drafted Malik Willis for a reason because they feel like this is going to be the last year with the Tannehill. You see this game where they just couldn't get anything going offensively. Like you can carry the ball with Henry, but the other teams just stuffing the run and game plan against him. And your wide receivers can't get open. You don't got A.J. Brown anymore. You don't got Julio on the opposite side. You got Woods, and then you got a rookie right now. And Woods isn't one of those special players. He's a great possession receiver, but he's not going to shred the offense. He's not going to be that type of guy. And I think that's what's killing that team there in the long run. And I feel like, just like I said, I feel like if they continue this, I give them until week 7 before we see Tannehill benched and then they put in Wills, because I feel like with how that division is, it could happen because you got the Texans look decent against the Colts, but they're not going to win. The Colts should be running away with it.
Lovie Smith teams always seem to play teams tough. You know what I'm saying? Like they might only win 8 games, but like they always seem to be competitive. They're always in games.
And the Texans had so many close games last year. Like I think half of the games were, 5 points or less. I felt like because they're always in those games. He said, "What good are rookie top 10 picks that they can't play? If Detroit can play Hutchinson all game, why are the Eagles not playing?" They have to play him though. That's the difference. They have to play him because they don't have the depth on their team where we had the depth on that defensive line. We got 4 defensive tackles in front of him that we had before he even got drafted. That's the difference. The Lions have to because they need him to be great. We don't even have to play him as much. It's just that we want to because we invested a first-round pick, and he's a dominant player on that team.
I don't want to hear this nonsense that, like, oh, his conditioning. Oh, yeah, that was a question coming to the job. I don't, like, stop. He's an elite athlete, and, I mean, we've seen big fucking I don't even know what the word, but we used to, like guys like Sam Adams and Gilbert Brown, like old, you remember like defensive tackles like that were just like you're just this big monster of a human being in the middle. What's his name from the Patriots for all those years? That ended up going to the Texans to end his career. Vince Wilfork. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like guys that you're just these monster human beings that take up space in the middle of your defensive line and stuff the run and do things that just impact the game that maybe don't always show up on the stat sheet, but are always going to show up on the film. And when it comes to the impact on the game, I don't need to hear, he's not in condition to be on the field. Well, bullshit.
I don't agree. I don't agree.
So I want to see him crawling off the field, begging for oxygen because that's how much he's struggling. Until I see that, like, that's nonsense that he didn't have the conditioning to be in the game. Like, what are we talking about here?
I don't agree with this, but I agree with this. Davis should have played more, not start, but Hargrave and Cox were getting gutted by the run. I agree with that. That's what I agree with easily. And that's why Davis is there right now. He's going to be a run specialist right now this year. And that's what he's going to be used. And they're going to play him more, but I still don't think that he should start. You don't need to have him start this year. You got the bodies. It doesn't really matter who they start because it's going to be rotating so much to keep them all fresh that it's like it doesn't really matter. So,
but this idea that he's going to stuff the run, like, I don't want it to be that the only thing is that he's on the field only in like run situations and stuff, which I feel like, defensively, that's what we saw week one. Like, it wasn't a run situation. Okay, well, if he's out, like if the team's passing and they see that he's not in the game, they've got a lot better opportunity to now try to switch to a run play if they want to at the line of scrimmage because they realize Jordan Davis is not in the game. So there's still situations. I just need him on the field because his presence on the field changes the way an offense approaches things.
No, I agree. I agree with you on that. A couple of other games that caught me before we go to the Phillies. We had the opening game. The Bills shredded the Rams. The Rams just couldn't get anything started. There was a total, I think, 5 or 6 turnovers in that game between both teams. They had no answer for Gabriel Davis at all. And then, of course, Cam Akers had no answer. Run blocking, pass protection in that game, and it forced that the turnovers that, of course, Stafford had. They just looked out of it. This is where you're seeing a team that didn't even use any of their starters looking rusty, and that was this game. So they started out 0-1. And then, of course, the last game I am going to talk about is the Chargers against the Raiders. Adams looked like a beast. But as an overall team, the Chargers look legit on both offense and defense. And they're one of my early favorites in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl right now. Could change, but that's my early pick right now on the AFC.
Yeah, I like the Chargers. I like everything about them as a team. Staley, their head coach, it's a little bit of a weird situation because in some ways I like what the guy is as a coach, but it seemed like his biggest downfall. Why is it all these guys that he's such a great offensive mind? Yeah, but he doesn't know how to game manage a football game if it smacked him in the face. Good Lord, this is a dude that literally if they wouldn't have called the timeout, they both would have the game would have been a tie at the final week of the regular season last year. And both his team and the Raiders go to the playoffs, and instead, he just completely mismanages the end of that game. The Raiders kick the game-winning field goal, and the Chargers miss out on a playoff spot. And the whole situation, you were being gift-wrapped a playoff spot, and you still found a way to fuck it up. It just didn't make any sense to me. But
I think having because last year the defense was just horrible. Between the defense being horrible, and then the fact that the right side of the line couldn't block to save their ass. Now their defense is creating plays. They're making life easier on the offense, and they're noticing the difference. And then you got to give it to the Raiders because they made the game competitive because the Devontae Adams, a lot of people were saying Aaron Rodgers made him. Well, obviously he didn't make him because if you watch this game, he shredded that Chargers defense. And I'm saying the Chargers defense was good, but that's just shown that Devontae Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the game, and not because of the quarterback throwing it to him. He's just that good. He gets open. He makes the catches. He had a couple touchdowns. He did what he needed to do to help keep his team in it. They had a chance to take the lead at the end of the game. They didn't. They turned the ball over on downs, and the Chargers won the game.
Yeah. I mean, I like where the Chargers are at. I think the Raiders will get better as the year goes on. The Raiders definitely look competitive. That'll be a fun division. It's we're going into week 2, so it's hard to judge a lot of things that are happening right now. But I mean, some of the things early on that I think we expected, we saw, and the question marks with like Green Bay and things like that. You saw Kansas City answered their question marks real quick about what they'll look like without Tyreek Hill. So
Tyreek who?
It's if any, and I think I remember saying over the offseason, I'm like, if anything, like Hill will miss that Chiefs offense. He's going to miss Mahomes way more than Mahomes will miss him. Like, it's way different when you got a guy that can launch a ball 70 yards downfield and you can just run underneath of it compared to what you're going to have to do in Miami with Tua.
Yeah, and
not that Tua's a bad quarterback.
No.
I think he's above average, but he's not going to he's not slinging a ball 70 yards downfield to hit you in stride.
No, but now that he has Hill and Waddle on the team, that made Tua look better, having those weapons that can go downfield. Waddle had that nice touchdown, and then Hill was catching passes, using his speed. So that's a situation where Tyreek Hill is helping the quarterback there in Miami look better than what he is. Because I do think Tua is a good quarterback, but having Hill there makes him look better because he gets open in space.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, Hill's a good player. He'll help that Miami offense a ton, and I think they're constructed in a way where, it's not like they need to go have shootouts with teams on a weekly basis, but they're trying to find an identity offensively that I think they didn't have before, and they've got a guy that comes from a system where this is the system that seems like all these teams are looking towards to try to find guys that, can build an offense for him that's I guess what's considered an NFL offense now. It's a Shanahan guy from the McVay coaching tree. That's where everybody seems to be coming from. So, I mean, they look good. They look good. They look good against New England. They look really good.
Yeah, well, and he's one of the few guys from that tree. You got that tree. You got the Sean McVay tree where you had Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, and then of course Kevin O'Connell is from the Sean McVay tree. He's in Minnesota. You've seen a lot of these young guys going off of trees now, like I said. But if you look right at the game on Thursday, that's going to be a test-worthy game for the AFC. You got the Chargers against the Chiefs in an early big-time matchup in that AFC West division. And before that, we got Don saying, "What's up, fellas? What's going on?" Of course, with the Lions. I liked a little bit what the Lions did, but of course the Eagles won. But that's going to be a big game there between the Chiefs and the Chargers. There's a couple other games that pop up. Dolphins, Ravens, that's going to be interesting. The Saints and Bucks, even though the Saints aren't the same team, they always seem to play Tom Brady well. You got looking on the schedule a little bit more, the Vikings and Eagles that we talked about. And then for some reason, I feel like that Cardinals-Raiders game in Vegas is going to be really good. I feel like that's a game where either team has a chance to win. But the big game, like I said, is the Thursday night game.
Who's playing the Thursday night game again?
The Chiefs and the Chargers.
Yeah, that's a good game. That's a really good game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in Kansas City.
Yeah, that's another one of those games you look at and you go like early division control. Who's trying to fight for that early,
Yeah.
The early kind of, hey, this is our division, type of feel. That's one of those games that's got that type of feel to it.
Yeah, definitely so. But before we move on and talk about, we're going to spend a few minutes on NCAA college football, and then we're going to finish up with the Phillies playoff push. How about you tell everybody about Manscaped?
About Manscaped. Okay, give me 1 second. This caught me off guard. I was trying to go live bet one of the baseball games, Daniel, and you catch me off guard with this. Okay. Yeah, Manscaped. If you want to get 20% off plus free shipping with the code A2D at manscaped.com. So you get 20% off plus free shipping with the code A2D at manscaped.com. It's time to throw out your old hygiene habits, upgrade your life. Manscaped, it's the new thing, everybody, it's hot. It's hot. Get on board with it while you can, and you got your A2D promo to get 20% off of it and save a lot of money. So, Daniel?
Yep. We got a couple more comments before I move on. John, Mr. Wing overrated defense. Laugh. Nah, first game again stinks. Defense will be better. Now I don't want to hear it, he said, but Jordan Davis deserves more minutes. I agree with that. And then lastly, the defense is 80 new players. It will take several games. Yada, yada, yada. What were some of your standout performances in college football from this past week? Of course, the big game that we're going to talk about is Alabama and Texas that took place in Texas, where Alabama squeaked out a 20-19 victory over Texas, but it wasn't that easy for them, like people thought it would be, with that 20-point favorite mark that they had.
Yeah, I mean, it's Alabama, man. They commit 17 penalties, and you're on the road, and all these things, and they still find a way to win a football game. That's why they're Alabama. But yeah, I mean that they need to get much better, don't they? And Saban knows it. He was very irritated. It was funny. He was talking about the depth chart. And he says, we're not seeing any more depth charts the rest of the year. The worst moment for this team when we brought out a depth chart. And he's like, I know you guys staring at me like I'm crazy. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I was like, this guy, yeah, he's out of his mind. Like, he really is. He's like some sort of like uber like psycho, but like genius, all wrapped into one type of person. And it's why he's got 8 national titles, 9 national titles, whatever it is.
That's why, because
it's amazing. It's this like level of detail.
It's because of the games like this where even though he wins, and they didn't look good doing so he's not like, all right, we won. He was like, we won, but we played like shit.
Yeah, he's so pissed. You've never seen somebody so more mad after they won a football game. It's so funny.
Yeah. But then I don't blame him, because he had Bryce Young, who had, I think, 60 yards passing going into the fourth quarter of that game.
And you want to talk about guys that won somebody a football game. I mean, he won them that football game with the play on the blitz where he made the dude miss and then ran 30, 40 yards to get inside the 20 so they kicked the field goal. I mean, that's like he makes the play that wins that game. Like they're just and just like Alabama, we saw it last year multiple times. They're dead in the water. They just look absolutely dead in the water, and they find a way to go win a football game. But yeah, you still feel like after winning the game that way, like he's going to make them run stairs the next day at practice, regardless. It's like he don't care that they won. Like everybody's running stairs, way too many penalties, all this nonsense. Remember they had the hot mic that caught him after the game yelling at one of his players, "Don't do that shit," because I think they were giving the horns down symbol or something, which was supposed to be like a 15-yard penalty or something now for taunting this year. But after the game, they're giving like the horns down symbol and stuff like that as they're taunting players after the game, and he's running out there, "Don't do that shit!" Like. I would be scared to be one of his players. Like, really, I don't want to go through what he probably puts those guys through after performances like this.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. It's just that Texas was a team that's going to play every other team well. And this was a step in the right direction for the Longhorns. They haven't been great since that national championship game against Alabama where they lost Colt McCoy. That was a big thing about this game, was that they haven't been the same since. I think they're taking a step in the right direction. Of course, they lose Quinn Ewers in the first half, and so he's going to miss 3 to 4 weeks with the injury with there. But the backup, I believe his last name is Cole, looked pretty decent in place of him. And then you got arguably the best running back in college football in Bijan, I believe it's Johnson, who had a great game trying to keep them in there, and that defense played well. It's just that late, Bryce Young did what Bryce Young does, and that's take over the game late and win in crunch time. And he was able to do that, and they squeaked out that 20-19 victory there. But it could have went either way late. I felt like if Texas would have had one more it left in them, they could have came back. But Alabama did what they do best, and it'll be interesting to see how they rebound from this near loss and see if they can right the ship, because just like Don said, Georgia might go back-to-back. Georgia isn't letting up on how they played last year, and they're looking like the team to beat, as they should, because they are the defending champions. And you got to see more from Alabama to think that they're going to upset them at some point in the championship game or in the conference championship game, one of the two. And with them say Cam Williams is nice, and then they said he thinks that Cam Williams is the best quarterback in college, hands down. I disagree. He's up there. He's great. But when you have Mario Williams and James Addison as your wide receivers, Addison is arguably the best wide receiver in the game. He transferred over from Pittsburgh. You get your top receiver from Oklahoma and Williams to transfer to USC, along with Caleb Williams, and then your coach, Lincoln Riley. That's a lot of transfers that are making big plays for that team. It's going to make him look great. That USC team could be a team that makes the playoffs this year because they made all those weapons, but they got to win. They got to win the big games, and we haven't seen them play a team yet that is worthy of saying that they beat a great team. They beat Stanford, but Stanford's not great. And then, of course, the week before, they didn't have a hard game either. With that, I got to look on who they played week one. They played Rice. So they don't have a great team until Utah week 7, and then they got Notre Dame the last week of the season. So it's like those are the two games that I'm going to really gauge how USC is as a top team, and because they got to win that Pac-12 in order to get to the playoffs, because we've seen two SEC teams are likely always they're going to get in it if they have one loss. You got like the Big 10, which is always going to produce somebody, and then you got the Big 12 that might produce somebody. So it's going to be you got to have a dominant team in the Pac-12 to even get to the playoff team. But if there was a team to do that, USC has the chances. They have the talent there to do so. It's just you got to see if Lincoln Riley can keep that team scoring a lot of points on offense, because the defense is going to be the side that kind of lacks this year.
Yeah, that offense. I mean, they look. Yeah, I mean, but it's fun to watch, especially they play all those late night West Coast games, and you're like 10 o'clock on a Saturday when you're trying to wind down for the evening, and you're just watching them drop 60. I don't care if they're playing some irrelevant piece of shit school. You know, Michigan played Hawaii. That was fun to watch Michigan have. Like, you're just like, Jesus Christ. I didn't know Michigan still. I didn't know Hawaii still had a football program. I was like, well, you guys still have a football program?
Well,
that's
because they always play at midnight, or because
what?
when they're at home because of Hawaii.
Remember when they
Hawaii.
used to be good? That was so fun when June Jones used to coach there. You're like, oh, former NFL coach, Colt Brennan's here.
Yeah, Colt Brennan.
Oh, that was so fun. They had like a 5-year stretch where they were really good. And then, like, I remember that they were like one of the original people bitching about, like, oh, well, like, they need to get their chance at a BCS bowl game. And then they got like smoked by Georgia, like 60-10 or something in like the Sugar Bowl one year. Colt Brennan in Hawaii went like 12-0, and I think Georgia beat them like 55-10 or something. You're like, yeah, that's why that doesn't. Yeah, no.
But here's a team to talk about. Notre Dame. They did
lose. Oh, I love talking about Notre Dame. Oh,
you
us
go,
sports bettors, Daniel. We know you fade Notre Dame every chance you get. Like Notre Dame is.
I'm gonna say
you never bet on Notre Dame to cover.
I'm gonna say this right now. Yeah, no matter who the coach was, it was gonna be bad because Brian Kelly's not even doing good with LSU. I felt like LSU is not going to be as great under Kelly. And then Freeman, a guy I loved, a guy that I thought was going to keep the culture, keep them when he has the players. They could lose a tough game against Ohio State in Ohio State. That's a game that I'm like, okay, they kept it tight all game. I can give it to them. But then you go this week and then you lose again. It's like, geez, I believe they lost to Marshall, if I'm correct.
Yeah, they lost to Marshall at home against Notre Dame. Like, just like things that like it shouldn't happen if you're the Notre Dame program. That they have fallen so far from what they were, 30 years ago, which is funny because my oldest brother was like an 80s kid. He's born in the early 80s and then grew up, late 80s and then early 90s. And it was like, he always talked about like everybody was either a Notre Dame fan or a Miami fan. Like that's like you kind of like picked one. Like those were the teams at the time that you kind of like. Oh, you always picked like one of the two usually, and like both programs you just look at and you're like, where's the time going with either one of them? How did either one of them ever get back to like what they were, 20, 30 years ago? I don't know if it'll ever happen. But Miami's got this new idea for a stadium down here that might be nice. So that might be a good step in the right direction for them. But I mean, you could kind of see this coming with Notre Dame. You know what I mean? You got a rookie head coach. Who knows if he's ready for it or not? He's young. He'll probably grow into the role. He seems like a smart dude and a good coach, but it's going to take a little bit for you to kind of hit the ground running and get everything in place the way you need it to. And, I mean, the schedule that they started with to start the year isn't always, you're just like, Jesus Christ, this is what Notre Dame does, right? They're always going to be playing in these big games.
And what's with it in Appalachian State always upsetting the team. When you look at these big programs, it's always Appalachian State who's that team that's beaten them. Of course, they went and beat Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. Last week, they came a 2-point conversion play away from upset North Carolina as well. So they could almost well be 2-0, but they're 1-1. But they defeat team in Texas A&M that everybody thought was going to take the next step forward this year from what they did last year. But geez, like I didn't expect to see A&M.
Did you watch that game? I mean, A&M's quarterback just looks. I mean, exactly. I mean, it was just like it gave me a migraine watching him. Oh, how did they expect to win anything this year with that kid at quarterback?
They invested so much into the defense and into their playmakers that they just forgot about quarterback.
Oh my God. It was just so brutal. Appalachian State has 2 wins against top 10 programs in their entire history, and they both have come on the road. One at Michigan in the Big House 15 years ago, and now this one against A&M. It's like
he said Texas A&M paid $21 million in recruiting.
I know, right? Isn't that like karma kicking you in the ass? Like all your NIL deals and all this stupid shit with all that going. They paid all that money to get these kids in here. You don't have a dude like. I mean, that kid playing quarterback is just
That is tough there. Like just like you said, that with the NIL deal, like they were able to have the number 1 recruiting class because they used that to their advantage. But it didn't have a big effect on the game for them coming and get that loss. That was bad with that. But I think the big thing was Appalachian State could run the ball and they did so effectively. Whereas with the A&M, they couldn't. They had 70 yards rushing to the 150 from Appalachian State, and that's what made the difference in the game was the running game. And then, just like you said, that quarterback couldn't do shit. He finished with 97 yards on 13 for 20. So it's like it was all short yardage plays for him. And he plays better when the running game gets going, but Appalachian State stopped the run for the most part. So it limited what that quarterback could do. He must not have the arm for them to trust. And that's my only thought process there, because how can you go 13 for 20, but then only get 97 yards? You would have thought that he would have had more.
Yeah, I don't know. That whole thing is just.
We're not even going to get into Scott Frost because that was just so bad that they lost.
They fired you. Yeah, that was how bad that was.
2 games in, and that's a program that's been on the tailspin for the last 10 years in Nebraska. They haven't got it right.
You know who deserves like a lot of credit, and you thought after last year, like can they get much better than what they did last year? But Kentucky and Mark Stoops and what he's built there to try to really,
he's done a great
for
job.
The first time turn them into a legitimate football contender. They just beat Florida, and you thought, okay, no way, they're not going to go to the Swamp. Yeah, I know they beat Florida last year in Kentucky, huge win, probably one of the biggest wins in program history. But that was also a Florida team that was about to fire their coach, and they were just really, bad at that time. But this is legit. Then to come in after Florida's coming off a huge win in week 1 against Utah, and you're thinking, okay, this Florida team, maybe they made the right hire with Billy Napier, and they've got things figured out.
I thought Florida came in a little cocky after that win. They came out sluggish. Kentucky was able to come in early and get the ball going, and then Florida kind of played from behind. And
Kentucky's got a lot of really legit. I mean, Levi, the quarterback, he's another guy that you're talking about. Is a legitimate NFL quarterback prospect. Smoked the running back, great player, right? I mean, they've got some guys that. If you look at that side of the SEC, I mean, they beat Florida, so now they got a game up on them, right? Alabama's in the other side, right? So. You're going to get Alabama and them in the, I guess Georgia, right? You're talking about Georgia is really the team that they look at, and that's tough, but that's the one team now. You know what I'm saying? You've got Georgia. It's them in Georgia, and you never know what can happen there, right? Like Georgia, it is tough to repeat. It is tough to go and, unless you're Nick Saban, unless you're these programs that have proven they're doing it over and over again, it's tough to be that program that goes and does it and has all that pressure on it to go and try to have that sort of success again back-to-back years. So, I don't know if there's a slip-up game. If you're Georgia, if there's a game like that, does Georgia play Kentucky? I haven't looked at the schedules. I'd have to think they do because they're in the same conference as the SEC, right?
I would check.
I don't know which week they play, but like that would be the one game you look at with Georgia and go like, maybe it is possible they could slip up in a game like that.
Let's look at them. They play them in November 19th, so it's week 12. So it's right before Thanksgiving, and it's at Kentucky.
It's at Kentucky. So you're talking about that. I mean, you might be talking about 2 undefeated teams right there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's
who's
possible.
Kentucky play? Does Kentucky play Alabama at any point?
Kentucky plays, let me go to the schedule. They play Youngstown State, North Illinois, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Georgia, and then Louisville. So no.
Oh, come
Georgia,
on. Yeah, I mean, you would have to think they get to that Georgia game. There's a good chance you get to that Georgia game undefeated if you just take care of business. Tennessee's a good program. Tennessee looked good. But, I mean,
it's going to be the Ole Miss game. They can't look past at
Ole Miss.
Yeah,
but there's a good chance there. I mean, that would be fun. If you could get to that Georgia game in Kentucky with both of those teams undefeated, I mean, that is such a beautiful game to watch a week before Thanksgiving or the week of Thanksgiving or whatever.
And then the funny thing, if you look at it, is Levis transferred from Penn State because he was behind Clifford. Imagine if Penn State was able to keep Levis.
I know. How do they not develop these fucking quarterbacks? Like, Jesus.
It's like the reason he transferred was because Penn State said that he couldn't work through his progressions. He goes to Kentucky. First year, they were very simple, kind of like with Jackson. They're very simple with the playbook with them. Second year, they progressed it a little bit. This year, they progressed it even more, and you're starting to notice the improvements he's made. And that's why there's a lot of, just like you said with Van Dyke in Miami, there was a lot of scouts at the Kentucky Florida game for Richardson and Levis, because a lot of people think that Levis could be that quarterback.
Richardson looks special. That kid is phenomenal.
He's got things to work on with this passing game, but other than that, he's going to be dynamic. He's that dynamic player.
He's electric.
But Levis is too. Levis is going to be more of a guy that you can develop into a pocket passer, and he could shoot up the boards after the combine. He's that guy that could be where you think he's a mid-round pick, and then he has a great combine, and then all of a sudden, a week before the draft, and you see him going in the first or second round all of a sudden, because that's the type of player that he is showcasing himself right now this year, early on.
Right.
But let's, before we wrap things up, we got like 5 or 10 minutes. Let's talk about the Phillies. Once again, like I said, you got the funny ace of the staff, Barely Falter, coming in there and getting another win. He's 4-0, 5-0 in his last 6 starts.
Pitched very well. Yeah, keeps you in ball games.
Yeah, like he's been that guy where you thought he was just a plug-in, and now
it's like the 6th time that we've seen Alcantara this year too, and it seems like we get to him better than anybody else.
Exactly, and he's that guy where, like I said, I thought he was a plug-in, and now it's like, how do you take him out of the lineup? How do you take him out of the rotation? 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 4 Ks, and then he outpitched Sandy Alcantara, the Cy Young, like one of the guys up for Cy Young right now, and he beats him. That's a big game. Regardless of the Miami, regardless of what they are as a team, you beat a pitcher this year that's been almost lights out for Miami. And then you outduel him with Falter. It seems like that's what he's doing. He's going in there, and he's just doing enough to win. Like I've seen in his last 4 starts, if you look at it right now, I'm going to go to his last 4 starts for Walter. He's gone 6 innings, 1 earned run, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 6 innings, 3 earned runs, and then 6 innings, 1 earned run. And if you even take the start before that, 6 innings and 2 runs. So that's 6 straight starts of at least 6 innings pitched, which is what you want from a starter. And he's limited in what – he's not going to be the guy that gets 10 strikeouts and plays dominant, but he's going to keep you in the game and get you that chance to win, and that's what he's doing. He's developed into that nice number 4 starter for that team because, of course, what you want it to be Nola, Wheeler, and then Gibson as 1, 2, 3, and then he's there at the 4. He's proved himself to where he's earned that spot in the playoff rotation, I feel like, with how he's played down the stretch. He's been your most trusted pitcher because he's winning games.
Yeah, I mean, it's right now we're the number 1 wild card spot, aren't we? I mean, we went and I think we've overtaken both teams, haven't we? No. Yeah, no. We got the Mets there, but we're second, right? So we're second. We're comfortably in second, behind the Mets, the Braves. That seems to change every night, but yeah, we're comfortably in second. You got teams stuck behind us in third.
Right now, the Mets are 2 ahead of the Braves, so it's the Braves.
The Braves,
and then we're 2 up on the Padres, and then we're 4 games up on the Brewers.
Yeah. Padres are winning 1-0 against the Mariners. Yu Darvish is pitching a gem, and I've got money on the Mariners in that game.
And then I felt like this was an important game today as well, because if you look, moving forward, we have the Marlins again twice, but then we got the Braves and then the Blue Jays. 3 against the Braves, 2 against the Blue Jays, and then 4 against the Braves. And that's a tough stretch there with how both the Braves and the Blue Jays are playing. So you need to get these victories against the Marlins right away. Like, you got to make sure you get those wins.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you want to take care of business against the bad teams that are remaining on your schedule, sure. I think this team at this point, it just gives you a different feel. Like you don't feel concerned about a late season collapse the way you felt in the past few years. It just has a different feeling to it. You know what I'm saying? They just don't give you that feel. And but yeah, you gotta play solid. And since I don't know whatever date it was, if you look at it, we actually since the beginning of July, I think if you look at the records in baseball, we're like one of like the top 5 teams in baseball. We might even be a top 3 team in baseball from a record perspective. But yeah, I mean, we're playing like, when we were playing, we've had a few letdowns, but for the most part, we're playing just as well as any team in baseball is down the stretch. And that's important as you head into the playoffs. And I think, it gives me a feel where like I'm excited for the idea of playoff baseball because I do think we can make a little noise. I don't just think it's, were you happy to be there and you get knocked out in the first round? Yeah, that could happen. We could get knocked out on the wild card round, but I think this is a team that can that can make a little noise there once you're there. You've got the pitching, you've got the offense. It all has to come together and click right at the same time. And it's we've seen that more consistently here in the second half, and they've been one of the better second half teams because of it. And you think about, okay, you get to the playoffs, a little extra energy, all these things with it. Why can't you make a little bit of noise? Why can't you?
Yeah, and I like what they're doing right now. And, of course, Bryce Harper hits a home run. He's starting to get his swing going a lot better since he's come back from injury. It's just all going to rely with the Phillies on the pitching staff. Yeah, of course, Wheeler come back from injury. Nola, you need him to bounce back. He's been hot and cold. You need to get these pitchers going, especially down the stretch. Like, even without great Bailey Falter's done, he can't be your best pitcher. It's great that he's doing it, but you need Nola and Wheeler back to be those 1 and 2s for you so that Falter can be like a 3-4 guy in the rotation. Because when you're playing the Braves, you're going to need your best pitchers available. With it looking like if we keep this the way it is, it's going to be us against the Braves in the wild card as we speak.
It's you don't look too far ahead, but yeah, it's a fun matchup. It's fun to look at what the potential of it could be. Yeah. And you want to try to look at it as positively as you can as a Phillies fan because we haven't had a postseason baseball in over a decade now. So yeah, like we should be excited. We should be fired up about what this team can be for us. This is what we all wanted coming into the year. I know it's not how we necessarily wanted to get here, with the ugly start and having to fire Girardi and all those things. But the end result is being in a position down the stretch where we control our own destiny. And could you ask for any more right now? These are the days that, 10, 12 years ago, Citizens Bank Park would have 45,000 people there, and it was the best environment you could be at on a, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening type of environment, It was rocking every single night, and it'd be nice to get it back to that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. After that, you got the Cubs for 3, you got the Nationals for 4, and then, of course, of all teams to end the season, we got a 3-game series against the best team in baseball, which is the Houston Astros. So, that's
a fun series. Yeah, that's a real fun series.
Hey, they could be in a situation where they've locked up the 1 and they might start sitting people. So, but we need to control our own destiny in the wild card.
Yeah, I don't know if baseball is necessarily a sport where I think I'm not really trying to rest guys down the stretch. But yeah, you could have a few guys, Altuve sits a game or something like that. It could happen. Although I feel like you do that more against, like, you're talking about, we're playing a last place divisional team. Okay, who cares? But when you're playing good teams like that, you kind of want to say, okay, this is a good team. Let's go match up with our best lineup because we're going to be be ready to do this in a couple weeks when it gets to playoff time, sort of thing. So
I don't think the magic number to clinch is going to be anytime soon, because of how close the Brewers are. They're the only real contender for the last wild card spot. If you look at it, you got them, they're 1.5, and then the next team's the Giants, who are 9 back. So I feel like it's going to be, you got the Phillies, Padres, and the Brewers are all going to vie for 2 spots, and one of the teams is going to be left out. And we do have that cushion, so we got to take advantage of it. And that's why I'm saying these wins against like the Marlins, the Cubs, and the Nationals, we need to win these games, as many of them as possible, because we can't be relying on beating like the Braves and the Blue Jays. Beating those teams would be great, but we got to beat the teams that we're supposed to beat, and then anything extra is just a plus at the end of the day. Like, we can't go in, beat the Braves 2 out of 3 games, split against the Blue Jays, but then lose 2 or 3 to the Cubs. That just can't happen. We got to win those games against the Cubs.
Here's a little fun statistic. I'm looking at the live box score of the Padres Mariners game, and Will Myers is at the plate, and he's got an OPS of 666. So, I'm not religious, but to those of you who are, I don't know, like that.
Yeah,
666 for an OPS. We got to get it off that number, don't we?
Yep. But we got, what is it? We got 3 weeks left in the regular season. It's going to be a great push. We got Ted. Who would you guys rather face, Atlanta or the Mets in the wild card? I don't want any part of Atlanta. We haven't done great against the Mets, but we've done decent against the Braves, at least. So it's like, part of me feels like I'd rather play the Braves because the Mets have had our number all year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always want the Mets. Like, I know the Braves, it's like they're the Braves, but like that, like that, just you hate the Mets, right? And you're like, you stupid fucking Mets, can't fucking stand you. Anytime there's a Mets Phillies game here in Philly, all you stupid Mets fans want to try to invade CBP, drive us fucking crazy, act like a bunch of assholes. Can't stand you, stupid Mets fans. Damn it, if it wouldn't feel good to like get them in a wild card playoff series.
Part of me hopes that we dropped in the 3rd wild card. And then, because I'd rather play St. Louis. We played St. Louis great this year, and I feel like we match up well against them. But I'd rather keep that 2 spot and keep the momentum going. And then you go into that. If you can upset one of those 2 teams, that'd be even great, because then you'd be tested early, and then you can move on knowing that you did well.
Yeah, I want to be as good as possible going to the playoffs. I want to keep the 2 seed, sure. Yeah. I'd like a little help right now. Seattle just got out of a jam in the 8th, so it's 1-0 San Diego as they go to the bottom of the 8th inning. Seattle about to come up. Yu Darvish pitching a gem, but again, it's 1-0, right? One swing of the bat, and that game gets changed around. And right now, the way San Diego's playing, you're looking at that and you go, if they can just get Yu Darvish out of the game and get to that bullpen right now, you might be okay. Get me Josh Hader in the game. Yeah. Could I get Josh Hader in the game? Maybe I could make something happen.
Who would have thought that? But it's like, looking back at that West Coast trip where we lost 5 of 6, and we didn't lose any ground because the other teams lost. Imagine if we would have won 2 of those games instead of having a 2-game lead on the Padres and a 4-game lead on the Brewers. It would be 4 and 6, and it'd be a very comfortable lead. But because we couldn't beat the Diamondbacks or the Giants, it's this close like it is. So looking back, it's like, damn, all we needed was 1 or 2 of those 5 losses to become a win. And it could have made a big difference in having a little bit of a nice gap down the stretch, knowing we have to play the Braves 7 times in the next 9 games after these 2 games against Miami. But I still feel like we're going to make it. I feel like we should be able to win at least 5, go 500 the rest of the way, which should be good enough to squeak in, knowing what the Brewers have to play and then who the Padres do. That's just going to be crazy if somehow the Brewers can catch the Padres, and then the Padres, with all that they gave up, they went all in.
Well, both teams are playing like garbage. The Brewers are playing like dog shit too.
Ever since they traded Hader, they've been going downhill. Like, talk about a trade being good for your team, but not playing up to what you were before.
But they both have gone downhill. What's up with this guy? Is he just like a locker room kid? Like, I don't know. Does he have like does he bring the ugly with him wherever? Like, yeah, it's like it's just contagious or something. Like it was so ugly. Milwaukee couldn't get rid of it, and now it's also in San Diego, so they're having to deal with the ugly. I don't know, man, but good
and
Lord.
It's kind of funny because if you look at Rodgers, his ERA is spiked up since going to the Brewers. So it's like, it's either way. Both guys were going to have high ERAs no matter what team that they were going to be on. But they had high saves going into it. They're number 1 and 2 in saves. So it was just like, with the Brewers, they're like, oh, we can get him, keep the saves, but then get several prospects on top of it. So why wouldn't we do the trade? But I guess it had a big effect because it's just that they can't hit. There'll be games the Brewers hit great and they get like 7-8 runs, but then there's a game where they get 0-1. They've just been inconsistent with that. And of course, the Padres were hoping that they would have one of those best hitting teams. They got Machado, who's hitting great. They got Juan Soto, who they brought in, but then we talked about it was a month ago. Tatis gets suspended being a dumbass, and now he's out until next year. So it's like they should just be glad that they traded for Soto because it's kind of taken Tatis's place. And that's why they have the edge to me over the Brewers, is because of that hidden side of things. And if they could just get a guy like Yu Darvish going, it's going to benefit a team like that, and I feel like they could match up well against St. Louis.
Yeah, I feel you.
But other than that, I guess that'll wrap things up with that tonight's show. I'll let you close things out on another episode of a weekly roundup.
Yes. Yeah, I've got to be to work at 8:30 in the morning, so that's fun. You know, I got to get to sleep after this.
Yeah.
But yes, good stuff. We got the Vikings in prime time this week, so that'll be fun. Big week of college football. But I'm Zach, and that's Daniel. Everybody here at A2D Radio, make sure you tune in to the rest of our content throughout the week. Like and subscribe on all of our platforms. Peace out.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys next week. Of course, next week we'll talk a recap of the Vikings game. We'll preview week 3 against the Commanders, do a little bit more of college football, and then we'll see where the Phillies are in the playoff race a week from now. They should be halfway through that series against the Braves, or getting started against the Blue Jays. So, just like you said, we will talk to you guys next week.